Stepping out of your old identity will feel really scary. And in terms of risk taking, this is one of the bravest things you can do. Deciding to become someone you really want to be.
Marko, I was looking at your site, and I had to make a note of the statement that you had on there. You have this statement called "blend in and be forgotten," and you sort of describe the content that you create is kind of a reminder for creatives to kind of stop playing it safe. And that was really intriguing because, especially at a time like this that we're in, I think you could argue that staying safe might be the option that people would prefer to do, particularly because the job market is very unpredictable. And so that element of risk taking could be kind of adverse to how people might be feeling. So I would love to just understand, what you really do and what is your mission, and how you kind of treat creatives in a way in which they can understand what it's like to be able to take more risk in their practice.
I mean, let's start with a statement like blend in, be forgotten. What's behind that is the idea that everyone is copying Bach, everyone is copying Apple, everyone is copying the top people, the top studios, and believe by doing that they get the same appreciation, they get the same attention, which they don't. And the thing is why big studios, the innovative studios are up there, is because they are trying to innovate. They are trying to reinvent themselves all the time. That's what great artists do. That's what great brands kind of do. Like Apple is a beautiful example. You have to keep innovating, otherwise you will be forgotten too. But what people do these days, what I see so many people in the creative industry especially, is trying to get to the standard where their idols are, their heroes are, and they believe once they are there that everything just unfolds and that they are safe, which will not happen because everyone is just going there as well. Like everyone else is in the same bubble then, and that's how trends kind of appear in the industry, right? That's how we all do the same thing. All of a sudden, you see the same kind of animation tests, portfolios, things like that. And in our daily work, like me and Hector, besides Paradiso, we coach and consult studios. And the core idea is really helping people to get back to their emotional core, like who they are as an artist, because that's what gets you up there, like trying to express yourself, trying to innovate or bring something new, something fresh in there. And that's why we do it. No one wants to copy other people, really.
Yeah. I think, as I was saying, I feel like there is this kind of tension though, right? Because let's say as a creative myself, and when I decided to go freelance, right, and start to try and look for work myself, it's not that easy. And I think trying to take risk when work may not be in abundance, like I was saying, could go, be the antithesis of, trying to actually get more work, right? Because a lot of clients don't want to, take that risk.
Is it really? I mean, is it? Do you really believe? I mean, yes, this is the general notion people have, but do you really believe you have less opportunities when you kind of play it safe, rather than when you actually express yourself, if you innovate, if you do things no one has seen yet before? I mean, when I started out, and I guess that's the same for you, in motion design wasn't really a thing. It just came out. It started out, and back in the days, we didn't have filters. You had to create your own scratches, your own materials to composite into the material, whatever. But you had to create the things yourself. You had to take risks. You had to define what can be done with the technique and the tools we had. And these days, what I see, people just wanna following steps like step 1, 2, 3, do it like this. And back in the days, there was not like do it like this because there hasn't anything been done like this yet.
And you had to invent the way forward, right? And there actually was not much of a reference point. You know, it's similar to like the first filmmakers. You were referencing life. You had life to reference. And then I feel like as the industry kind of progressed, then you sort of default sometimes. You can default to reference what just came behind you, right? Or what happened, a few weeks ago, or something you saw online on social media, and then that becomes a trend. But I suppose you could argue that there weren't any trends at the beginning, or even when I believe when you and I got into the industry, there was a frame of reference for motion design, but not as much as there is now.
There were some big players. Psyop is one of them. Bach obviously was there back in the days, but there was the same thing. Like you saw that they tried new things, and was like there wasn't that much content around, and it wasn't that fast paced either. But the general idea was there's a tool, try to do something with that. And we got really fast, we got to the limit of the tool. So then we had to start playing with it, right? And these days with AI, it's hard to get to the limit of the tool, really. So I believe, and look, yes, I mean, we all went to school, we all got conditioned to work a certain way, like this is the goal, you have to do it this way, that way. But as a creative, I believe our job really is it to break out of the rules, to not do it the way it is expected, because I really believe that creativity or creative people have the obligation to show a different path, to do it differently, to actually create things that haven't been seen yet. That's the core idea. Like you are getting hired by the biggest studios if you do research and development stuff, not putting polished stuff on your portfolio. No one wants to see that.
And so, with all of that said, how do you, like when you're working with your clients and individuals or companies that you're coaching, how do you approach that topic of risk with them and encourage them to take more risk?
Well, a few things. So, first of all, you have to make them understand that playing it safe is really holding them back, and that the people they admire, they don't play it safe, right? They set the trends, they do come up with new things, they do a lot of research and development. I talk a lot with like the top studios. We don't work with all of them, but with some of the top studios, what they tell me in the conversations is all of them, they do in some way or form the research and development. Like Future Deluxe, for example, I think they have this thing where they every employee gets 1 day a month where they can just explore and create something they want. Right? This is beautiful. This is how it should be. And then out of that, there comes so much material that they can use for pictures, for other things. Other studios have, like, we just came back from Dixon Bugsy. They have like, they close down the whole shop for a week every year to just innovate and to create and to think and to do something different. And every one of those big studios, they have some form of that innovation practice where they're just trying to keep smart and sharp and push their people to actually have fun and then not just do the client work.
Yeah, and that's a huge luxury too. And I think it's important. Like if the bigger studios can do that, right, and take that much time to explore and experiment, it does, as you see it in the work, right, it does influence the work positively. And that's something I feel like it's hard to do again. And I'm just putting on my general hat. In the general sense, it's difficult to say, okay, I as an individual are going to take some time out to be experimentative. Yeah.
It's tough and it's a mindset shift, but it's also like when people start working with us, it's also like they're frustrated. And this frustration comes from not doing what they really want to do, but just fulfilling client work. So it actually for you, for your soul, it's really good to have like this creative practice where you maybe one day, maybe the first hour of the day, you just create something that you want to create and not don't worry about client stuff. You probably know PJ Richardson from Laundry. He spends like 1 or 2 hours every day at the end of the day to craft something. He has this daily. He creates one image a day that he puts out on social media. That practice got him where he is with Laundry. Like this, it's not a lot. Like everyone can do that. You don't have to invest millions. You have to invest time. Yes, but then again, it's like, why are you creative? Isn't that what you really want to do? Don't you want to explore something? Don't you want to craft something that's your own? Right? That's the tension here, right?
Is there anything like in your conversations with, those who you coach where, it's like the top few things that how you think that creatives kind of misread risk taking and decide not to do it or kind of have this fear of stepping out?
Yeah. So, general idea, something I teach or I really believe in is that in the past 10 years, the whole creative industry, not just the creative industry, also the whole society became very transactional. So we optimized. SaaS companies became really big, right? And with the SaaS companies, the notion of lean processes, all those things, we stripped out humanity of the processes. When I started out a pitch for, I don't know, a TV channel, used to take 3 months. Now they have maybe 3 weeks, if even, right? And to create something, you need this time. So the general idea, and I think the cure for a lot of the things is try not to think so much in the short term. Don't focus on short-term gains, but focus on where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years. Work towards that, and that means yes, you will have to take a risk. That's what it means. Like you're not focusing on building this cash flow business where you just deliver, and which I believe like it works, yes, but it also constrains you. So, but if you take the time and you want to build something big, then in the beginning you have to invest in some way, shape, or form. Could be money, could be energy, whatever. But this at some point will become an exponential return on investment and not just this linear growth thing. And I believe in the past 10 years, we all got conditioned to this linear growth because it feels safe.
Right. Yeah. It feels comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element of trauma, that comes from, it could almost be felt as like a dangerous move. But, I was reading the other day that actually being safe could actually become more expensive for you, right? So it's almost like, keeping your money under your mattress and, feeling safe and comfortable and having that warm, cozy feeling versus taking some risk with your finances and investing, etc. So they're kind of trying to relate it to that in a way, right?
And I guarantee you wouldn't be where you are if you would have never taken a risk. And the risk is not only financial. Like for a lot of creatives, the risk taking is more to expose themselves in some sense, to getting out there, to basically in some way stepping out of the comfort zone, the safe zone we have built for us, right? And then going out there. And it's hard. I get this too. Like it's like if I don't practice taking risks all the time, I also get lazy and I get conservative and I don't want to do things. And then you get older, all of a sudden you have a family, you have responsibilities, all those things, right? It plays into the mindset. It's like it's harder now than to take risk than it was like 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Especially when, I don't know, I feel like when you talk about trends, right? There's like this expectation sometimes where people who you may be working for, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of clients may see something and say, oh, we want something that looks like that, or that thing we saw, and here's the references. And so you have to work really hard to kind of pivot sometimes from that. If somebody is coming to you for your craft and what you think is the best design execution or the best solution for the problem that, you know, they're trying to solve and you're solving it with them, then maybe you have something over here that is not maybe represented in the initial reference that you're given, right? So then now you have to actually get your clients on board to also be up for taking that risk with you too. And outside the frame of reference might just be something that's trending right now. And, you know, you can attest to this. There's a lot out there that feels kind of similar, right? And there's a lot of mediocre work that's also mixed in with all of the brilliant work that we see too. And sometimes that brilliant work is not really seen. It depends what your clients are looking at on a day-to-day and what their reference points are.
Yes, and here will be my response. Whatever you show in your portfolio, this is the kind of work you get. So when you get the client, when you show client work, you get the execution. Like most people just show the perfect execution. That's what you get. You get work. You get the jobs to execute, to polish it. If you show a lot of research and development on your website, in your portfolio, thinking and risk taking to me is just research, just trying things, and you show that, then people come to you for new ideas, for fresh things, and then you get into the earlier conversations, and in those earlier conversations, you have more creative power. You can steer the direction. There are also bigger budgets and all those things, right? It kind of depends on what you want to be known for, and that's what I believe. What you just said is so true. Playing it safe will cost you a lot of money, because at some point people will not come to you or trust you to actually do something new. They only come to you to execute something. And when they come to you to execute, you're always in this price comparison thing where people just want to get the best price.
It's almost like subconsciously people are looking for that something different, right? But in a way, the people that you're working for and that come to you with their creative problem to solve are also maybe in that safety mode, but subconsciously want something different, you know? And so, I mean, I'm sure this has probably happened to you and a lot of people who are listening, where you do try to create something out of the box and you show it and it's like, oh, no, that's too risky. Oh, I'm not sure if that's, you know, something that we want to do right now or we want to try. There are times when it works, and it's definitely worked for me where I've created something out of the box. And, you know, it's been well received, and I'm glad that I rolled the dice, right? But few and far between a lot of the times.
I mean, I used to have my own studio that was like, what's that, like 11, 12 years ago. And we worked with big clients. We did like big TV stations around the world. And it was always the same. People wanted something new. That was always the brief. It got to be new. But we also knew it can't be too new. There got to be this element of something they know. There got to be this trust element in some way. So you can't go too far. Like if you reposition, I don't know, Pluto TV, you have to stay within their language in some way. But also you want to find that one idea, that spark that goes beyond that, and then it just opens something new. I don't think that quiz taking means to break with everything that's there. That I mean, maybe that's a big point to talk about. Risk taking is not breaking with the old, but it means to invent something new and build up on that, but not just throw everything away.
Yeah. And personally yourself, throughout your career, is there any kind of big risk that you took that you can say really changed the course and direction of your life for the better?
Well, okay. 3 quick stories. So when I was 20, I actually moved to Mexico. I didn't speak English. I didn't speak Spanish. Just moved there. Ended up working in a hotel. Learned language. But the key point here is that was a huge risk, and I was emotionally unstable. That's why I did that. And I don't want my kids to do that. However, I learned so much from that experience, and it wasn't always a nice experience. They got me to places. Um, Also in my headspace, my mind, thinking what's possible, all of that. That after that, I studied abroad. I went to university in Germany, and then I studied abroad. Things like that, things I would have never thought about. Then I opened up my own studio, and it worked for some time. And then I got into a huge fight with my partner, and that was a big risk for me too, financially and well, creatively. And it didn't work out. So I left the company, but the things I learned alongside kind of got me again into a new mindset. And now the next thing is with Paradiso. There was a huge risk right from the get go. We didn't know what's going to happen. We didn't know how all of you would respond to that. We wanted to create something new, but we believed in it, but we didn't know if we had no idea what's going to happen once we are all there. Right. And but here's the thing. I never in my life felt that alive like in the past 12 months since we are doing this.
Would you say it's because it's something just completely new where there is, you have some form of a roadmap? And I know, speaking to Hector, the roadmap only goes so far, right? And then it's very much on impulse and feeling of what to do, and not necessarily wanting to plan so much. It's like, let's try this thing and see how it goes. And that sort of notion of living on that edge, right, which he described when I was speaking to him in Paradiso, right?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So what was it about this that really, why did you decide to do Paradiso with him, yourself personally?
I was like, I had the consulting business we have at the moment. I was doing this for the past 10 years. I was bored. It was too easy. It was no challenge anymore. And then I met Hector, and he talked about this big idea. And honestly, I loved the idea. I wanted to build something bigger, something in some way give back to the community and build something that's cool, that's fun, and things like that. So what got me there wasn't a rational decision. It was that could be cool. I could get somewhere, and I wanted to experience working with him. So in the end, that it was just I was bored, and I knew that I could just ride it out and get retired at some point. But what's the point in that? There's so much, right? And that's the point. There's so much things you could be doing. And what you just said, like this is really what I learned from Hector. Like, you have to have a roadmap, but then you do so much on intuition and feeling. And when I look back into my early days as a motion designer, that's what we did, like on intuition and feeling. We created out of that energy, and we didn't have a plan, and something beautiful always came out. There was this happy accident, those things that came out. And Hector very much still operates business in that kind of sense. Now it feels more risky than it really is. But it is always the challenge. Like, he always wants to challenge, is that really the right way, or is it just a safe way whenever we do something?
I always like to ask people, because there's definitely, like, we're obviously talking about risk. And fear comes with that risk. And so when you are, I would say, like, let's say you're bored, but you're also playing it safe and you're settled in what you're doing. You're hopefully making an income that can sustain you, sustain your family. And then there's this other thing that you desire to do. And coming out of that comfort zone it's really difficult for a lot of people to see that thing that they desire to do that may not be, aligned with the most comfortable path. And so I'd love to know, like, how you get over that, and how you yourself take yourself out of that comfort lane and jump into something that you don't know if it's going to work or not. And we have a lot of considerations when you're, let's say, our age. There's more responsibilities than if we're 20 years old. potentially living at home or don't have as many responsibilities. So like what does that look like? Like how do you do that? And also how do you then translate what you do and how you approach it to people that you advise?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is like there is no safe way to play it not safe. So you will have to take a risk. But the question I like to ask, and I also ask myself, is at the end of my life, on my deathbed, will I regret not taking this journey, this decision, or will I regret failing at it? And I think failing at something, you will never regret failing at something that you wanted to try. But you will regret at some point not to have made that experience in some way, not to have tried to get somewhere and actually to live the life you want to live. And I'm not saying like everyone should take risks, not at all. And I also don't think that everyone should take risks all the time. But the mindset we have at the moment in the economy, in the world, is like the default mindset goes to, let's not take a risk. Let's play it safe. Let's see what everyone else is doing. And I also think there's a huge opportunity, especially for creative people at the moment, especially with AI and all those other things. Like a lot of people freeze, right? They just freeze now because there's AI, don't know what to do. You could embrace it. You could take the risk and learn it and get known to do things, right? That's and play. And so when we do leadership coaching with people, which basically is just one-on-one with executives and big companies, one of the most important things and the things I do in the beginning is help them to establish a creative practice again. Meaning, I want you for 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day or 1 day a week, whatever works for you, just create something with no agenda. Can't be client work, but it could be drawing, it could be doing music, it could be one actually start DJing again. Now, what happens if you do those things? Like you connect to your energy again. And when you come up with a different energy, people will listen to you differently. All of a sudden, you have a different authority. All of a sudden, things come to you just because you showcase a different energy. And that's all because you kind of you get this energy back of creating and not just working on client projects, basically. And don't get me wrong, there are amazing projects with clients out there. It's not like every client project is boring.
Yeah, I think that reconnection is actually a really great point, right? And that confidence that comes from reconnecting back with yourself. It's very easy to get caught up with, your day-to-day creative activities, life activities. And sometimes if you lose that creative spark, you could also kind of lose that confidence to explore and that confidence to experiment. And before we had this conversation, we were talking, online, and you mentioned something about people almost losing the ability to choose who they want to be, right? And that really stuck with me because choosing who you actually want to be, again, kind of feels like in this creative environment now, with how the market is a luxury. And I've never seen, you look on LinkedIn and you see, you're looking online and all of the posts where there's a lot of people out of work right now. And so how do I choose who I really want to be when there's a deficit out there? And I'm not saying for everybody, but I feel like it's quite extreme right now, right? And so how would you suggest we kind of, take that choice of being who we want to be and be? Do you think we have the luxury of being choosy in the market right now?
Well, no, I don't. I'm not saying you. Well, if you need to make money, you need to make money. Make the money, but your best work will not come out of playing it safe. So I also want you to take some time every day and practice something, do something, get better at something. Because only if you really do what you want to do, that's when the energy comes in, when you create the beautiful things. But if you get hired to do something, I don't know, put subtitles for podcasting or something, and that's all you do, or lower thirds for television. Not sure if this is still a thing, but that's the most boring thing I could think of. So if you do that day in, day out, like, it's not going to be inspiring, and you're going to lose the grit, you're going to lose the confidence, and you're going to doubt yourself. And yes, if all you do are lower thirds, then you will not get hired by the companies you want to get hired by. But when I look, almost everyone in the creative industry, in our space at least, they want to be good, and they want to be acknowledged. They want to be seen. We all want that. I want to be seen too, right? I want to be loved, seen, felt. But what are the chances that you actually get to you? Like, if you want to get there, you have to show yourself. You have to be vulnerable, and that's kind of the biggest risk, probably.
If let's say I run a small business right now, and I want to, pivot and potentially just switch up the kind of work that I'm doing. You mentioned doing the lower thirds, and I want to change that and, start to get what I feel is more interesting work. Are there any signals, other than, putting up the work that you want to do on your website? Are there any signals that you sort of recommend that, the creative individual or business kind of sends out there in order to be able to attract that kind of work?
So I usually explain this in the pyramid, like there are 3 layers. At the bottom layer, that's where we all start out, is the craftsman. And what's important there is to create amazing quality work. But the money you can make and the budgets you get at this level is very limited, because you're usually at the end of the creative cycle, like you're the executor, you execute things. If you want to get to the better or the bigger projects, the bigger budgets as well, the first thing you should be doing is to demonstrate that you can think, and in some way express that thinking, because you want to get into the strategic conversations. Well, what do they do there? They think, they talk, right? That's the idea. So you have to demonstrate that. The way you can demonstrate that is very simple. You could talk about the process. You could talk about creativity. Like, you actually do content. That's one. But also on your website, you want to have a little more text than just the portfolio and an about text. You want to explain what your process is. You want to maybe talk about the vision you have for your clients, or the mission, or maybe you want to talk about the pain points or the specific concept you have, and things like that. So this is about thinking. So you gotta articulate the way you work and the value you bring to your clients. So that's the first thing. And that's usually what gets you into the early conversations already. But then there's another level at the top, which is more about relevance. So that's where I see research and development. That's where I see innovation. You want to innovate something. So that could be like you do at the moment, like the podcast here. You're trying to bring something new to industry. You want to bring some messages out. So that, to me, is research, development, innovation. People follow you now because of that, right? That they cling to you. So you are very relevant in the industry at the moment. And this is something else, like this leadership kind of, I don't want to say influencer, but it's like, it's a leadership position. You want to help people to grow. And that's, to me, is the top level. And that's something else every studio can do. And it shouldn't always be about your work. Like, people can contribute, and like the top level is also about contribution to me. It's like giving something back, like you with the podcast, us with Paradiso, right? It's giving back in some sense. So it shouldn't always be about the work you do, but maybe the culture around that, and you want to engage with people, you want to get people together. That's the level. So if you're a small studio, the first thing you should demonstrate is that you can actually think. And the easiest way to do that is, well, the hardest way, but the first step is to articulate the value you bring to the client in words, not just in pictures.
And almost like that becomes something that's repeatable as well. I think there's something really important where you can kind of leave the breadcrumbs to show who you are and what you stand for. That could be through text, that could be through image, that could be through your posts online. Whether you're trying to advise, give back, or show the work that you're working on and that you find interesting that you're doing in your own time. But then I think it becomes really powerful when, let's say, you see something that someone else does, and then you repeat that to somebody else and say, "Oh, have you seen so-and-so's work? You know, it's kind of like this," or this is the last cool thing I saw what they did. And then this is how in your mind, they're representing themselves. And then you are able to articulate that to somebody else, and so on. And so then the brand becomes not just necessarily what is present on the website, but then the brand becomes the messaging that other people spread as well about you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Like if you have the words other people can repeat, it's easier for them to recommend you, right? It's like if they know what you stand for, that's why having a mission, a vision, or something that's repeatable, like Elon Musk, like Occupy Mars or something like that, it's easy to follow him or to talk about him because we know where he wants to go. And this is how you create a following. It's like when you have this vision, this mission, then people want to become part of that in some sense.
Yeah. Which again, you know, it takes time to build that, and it takes time to, I think, really internalize and go inside and think about who you really are, right? Thinking about choosing who you are, you first have to know who you are. And I think sometimes if you may know kind of the direction that you want to go in, but then there's this hesitation. And again, I feel like this is kind of derived from a bit of the fear of the unknown, of taking that first step to try and discover who you are also. Because as we were referencing with, say, Paradiso as a great example, you do have some frame of reference or a roadmap, but it can only go so far. And then you have to revise potentially over time. Like, let's say you did the first round of Paradiso. It's like, okay, what worked, what didn't work? But you have to do that to know. And then second round of Paradiso next year in 2026 might look a little bit different. You know, you may approach it differently. There's things you're going to change.
Great point. I mean, Hector did festivals for 25 years. He created one of the most influential festivals in the motion and design space. So he knew what he was doing, but nothing we do is like he did it off. And that was kind of the core idea, because he wanted to break out of that. He said like he needed to break out of the rules he created for himself. And I believe that too, is like it doesn't have to be perfect the first time around, because this naivete, it creates also something beautiful. It creates something that you couldn't have planned.
Yeah, definitely. And everyone had, you know, their own personal experience with the festival, right? Or the gathering. I wouldn't say it's even like when you think of festival, you think of this huge 1,000, 2,000 people. It felt actually like more of an intimate gathering to me.
It's more like a retreat. We still don't know how to call that, what that was. We don't know what it was. But what we have learned is also like, we don't have to know. Maybe we don't have to define it.
You mentioned a little while ago the power of words and text, being, having it on your website or, in your bio to communicate who you are, not just necessarily what you do, right? So this is kind of, it's perception and language and creating this reputation. And I think, words are extremely important, and the behaviors that accompany those words are equally, if not more important, like what you actually go and do. Are there any kind of words or behaviors that you've seen that can actually sort of detract from your reputation or lower the perception that people have of you?
Yeah. So if we talk just about words and what kind of words to use and what not to use, um, if you use complex, complicated, long words, scientific words, they don't mean anything to people. Like if you, let me take a loop here. So we all, like in the age of 5 to 12, our prefrontal cortex, our brain starts to develop, right? That this is what we consider our brain, where we can have the logical thinking. Before that time, we can already speak. But I do not, like my son, he's now 7, he starts to understand complex words now. But he still doesn't understand what strategy is. I can't tell him I can ask him what his strategy is to, I don't know, play soccer or whatever. So that's not working. Now that means that those words that we have learned before our real brain was developed, they got computed, they got, we use them differently. We digest them differently. And the way we digest them is through the limbic system, which is the more emotional part of our brain, which develops earlier. That means, so if you use the words that the 5 to 6 to 7-year-old can understand, then you bypass the logical thinking. You go straight into the emotional part of the brain, and the chance that your words stick is so much higher. For example, instead of using the word strategy, you could just say a roadmap, a plan, things like that. Just stick. There are no shields against that. Because again, like if I hear the word strategy, I have really bad experiences with strategy. I don't want to work. I don't want to talk. Like a strategy session for me could mean like, well, I have bad experiences with that. All that. So one of the things is to use simple words, because it's also harder. Like if you want to explain what you do without using complex words that kind of mean nothing, it's getting harder, and you actually have to get to the truth of what you really want to tell people and what you really want to say. So I think that's an important part here. Like the words you use will attract the kind of clients you get. Again, so if you use complex words, you get complex clients that don't know what they want.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like I was listening to a podcast the other day. It was Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, and he was saying that he was in prison with somebody. He actually went to a prison where they play his podcast, and he was sitting with an inmate, and I think it was something along the lines of the guy basically said he didn't understand something that he was saying, or he didn't understand the episode. And Stephen, he asked like, why? And he said, because you use all of those big words. And so it really made him think, like whenever somebody comes on the podcast as a guest, and he feels like there's something that needs to be explained, he will, interrupt and say, oh, could you just explain that for me, if it may not be common knowledge. And I think even, of course, probably in his own interview style, he sort of really thinks about that moving forward, and being able to use words that everybody can understand and not trying to be too smart with it. And that comes with, I think, how we explain our ideas, and how we talk to people in a room. I think when you're communicating your concepts and ideas too, there's a way in which you have to communicate so that everyone can understand it, because the end audience is actually, the general public, right? And you want your ideas to be understood by as many people as possible, unless your approach is not that and you're targeting a specific audience, right? I think there's levels to it in terms of what brief you're trying to solve and who the target audience is, but I think if the more people can understand it, the better.
I definitely agree with that, but I also think it goes beyond that. I think the smartest people are the people that can explain it in simple terms and break it down to very simple concepts, because that is not easy. And it's like a lot of times we use when people want to create a value proposition or brand promise or explain what they do, we tend to lean to words that include a lot of things, but don't really say anything. And that's when the language becomes vague. And when you have a vague language, people will not take action on a vague language. But they need to understand what you do, what's the outcome. Like if I tell you you will get a emotional response due to the animations I make, it's like what, like how? I don't understand. But if you tell them like I'm going to create a feeling that people will remember you, and now that's already a different language. Like emotion and feeling is like emotion is any could be anything. A feeling is more specific, and maybe you want to be more specific with the feeling as well. We gonna create this feeling of being connected and feeling warm and things like that. So that's why I also love storytelling, because I actually believe the more words you can use, the deeper you get into the people's brains.
Mm.
The longer you talk, the deeper you get into them, then the more they trust you, the easier it is for you to, well, basically sell them something.
And it's your value, right? And I think just riffing off what you just said about selling people something, there's also a price that comes with that, right? Like how much you can sell your services for. And, you know, thinking about words and perception, how do you kind of use the words and perception to, you know, kind of increase your value and increase your price? I mean, creativity is one thing, but perception is another. And I think that the words that you use can also have an impact on how people value you and how people perceive you. And so when you're coaching your clients, do you have any recommendations of how people can present themselves with their words to increase their value?
It's more maybe not yeah, well, it is about words too. Okay, that's so a lot of the marketing you see out there, it also on social media, it plays on the fears of people, like on fear of missing out, for example. That's a big one. Now the problem with that is if people buy out of a state of fear or of not having enough, of lack of something, they buy out of a bad mood. So they want to protect something, right? They don't want to overspend. That means they will never pay you more money. Like if people buy out of that problem state they have, this is a problem, because they will compare because if you have a problem, you want to play it safe, and then they will make sure that they get the best deal, basically. I'm gonna have a story in a moment. But then there's the alternative. If you talk about the big vision, about where you could get to with your help, and you get people in a better mood, in a better state of mind, and they buy out of that state, then money is not really the limiting factor anymore, meaning money is not as important anymore. I want to give you like a really specific example. And this is an example that's outside the creative industry, so I like to tell this to people. So a friend of mine, she's a personal trainer, Nicole, and she tried to sell personal training, nutrition plans, all those services. And it is hard to actually convince people to pay you a lot of money. So you stand next to them when they do their exercises, right? It's like certain educated people will know that how beneficial that is. But then again, they are also educated. They may not need a coach anymore. So what we changed is just the offer. So we didn't tell them you need personal training so you can lose weight or something, or to get fit, whatever. So we went through the whole process that I do with clients as well, and she ended up selling now a wedding body toning program. She's still doing the same thing, but now people have a positive vision of where they could get to. They have a goal, meaning people are actually motivated, way more motivated. They actually get to their goals. They actually show up for training. They have this new identity already in mind. She basically sells a new identity of who you could become, and that puts people in a very good state. And now they're excited. They want to get there. Hence, before she couldn't really make a living out of that. She tried to sell it for $90 an hour. Now she sells programs, I think 4 months, 4,000, and something else up to 10,000 for a longer period. It's different now, and people line up to work with her. But that's like just the use of words, like I sell the service or I sell a big vision, and you just describe that different. It's just a change of words, really.
Yeah, I think that's a great one, because what you're speaking about here is somebody else being able to see themselves in your vision, right?
Yeah.
They can see themselves there, and they share that vision with just that little change of words. She's probably not changing the service per se, but she's changing the vision of what it represents. And now I can see myself there, right? Illustrated in my mind. That now is a lighthouse for me to target. And that's what I can become, through the service.
And now imagine reaching out like that. It's way easier to get clients, and because we have something positive now, and you're not doing like, hey, I see so many things on social media where people talk about the negativity, like you gained more weight, don't you want to lose weight, things like that. But if you actually put that beautiful picture of the future into people's mind, that's an empowering statement. Now that is also harder to sell, because you're not activating the amygdala, which has this immediate impulse buying thing. But once people commit, they are committed, and they are committed to pay more money.
Yeah, because clickbait essentially works because it plays on the emotion. And I think, yes, you've seen success from that. And so then that becomes a default mode. And what happens with that, then you start to see the same thing all the time, right? And then how do you break out of that noise? And I think that was a very beautiful example, actually, the story that you just told, because that actually does help you break out of that and give people an aspiration, right? I want to achieve this, and they're inspired by the vision. It is harder to do because, using clickbait and using your language and words in that way can also, get people interested. But then I believe that you're fighting against everyone else that's kind of using that same tactic.
You will always have competition, but I think also for yourself and for your team, creating this goalpost, this where you want to get people to, that creates like a mission, and that helps people understand, oh, we want to get people there. Like this is, and the whole energy in the company can change. And the challenge really for studios is to understand what can we actually promise without overpromising, because there are so many people out there that they overpromise, right? And that's also bad. But what can we promise where we can get people to in a realistic way? And I think and that's what I mean with explaining the value of your creative services, of your work, is, to me, the way is to explain where people can, and in best case scenario, should end up working with you.
Right. And also, I believe that that's actually something that's easily repeatable. Going back to, the sort of reputation and somebody being able to explain what your offer is, that's something that I remember very quickly, and I'm able to repeat that to someone else. And then, you're doing it, you've signed up, and now you're telling your friends about it, and then so on and so forth, right? It's something that you've distilled down to be a very simple phrase or a very simple idea.
Could be that, but if I think back, like 20 years back, Bach was still a small studio, but they made a name for themselves by they had the most beautiful transitions between pictures. That's how they got famous in the very, or at least for me, like that's what I explained to people like this. They're really good at making those animated transition from one to the next picture. But yeah, something repeatable, like people can see, feel, hear, replicate. That doesn't can it could be the style too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's kind of a reputation you build.
Yeah. Which is really important now also to be building that reputation alongside of, your creative practice. And I've been thinking about it a lot recently. I have a lot of people reaching out, and we have been having a lot of discussions about the state of our industry right now, particularly, graphic design and motion design. What do you think is actually happening right now? There's, as I was saying before, it feels to me similar to, I guess, like earlier on in my career around 2008-ish, when the economy wasn't great. It felt like a lot of people were struggling to find work or find their voice. What do you see is actually happening right now out there? And, you have a lot of conversations with people, I'm sure.
I assume you are long enough in the business to maybe remember the transition from 4:3 to 16:9
Just
format.
like the first year we
Yeah, okay.
did that. Yeah,
But that was analog to digital, kind of the thing, and there was a similar fear. It wasn't like maybe as big because also there were less people in the business or in the industry maybe. But it's the same thing. Like that totally changed the industry. We went from film to digital all of a sudden, and I heard the same things like, we're not gonna have any more jobs anymore, and then with digital, everything is so much easier, and clients could do it themselves now. They don't need to have big cameras. But what really happened is an explosion of jobs, of possibilities. There's so many more creatives now there due to the fact of digital. Now, I can't really comprehend the next level where this will all lead to, because my brain is just not computing this, and I think it's a huge change. But that's where I assume the industry to end up is like more jobs, way more jobs, but also different jobs. Like from analog to digital, like the storytelling became different. Projects became shorter. And I think that trend could potentially continue. But then again, we have companies like Apple, like you, working on a new form of media with the Vision Pro and things like that, right? This will also influence the industry. So I think the industry is really bright. The people that are stuck, a lot of people that are stuck, not everyone, but a lot of people that are stuck because they want to keep playing it by the old rules, but the rules change.
And how are they changing? Like, where do you see? I mean, if you had a crystal ball, you'd probably be, but where do you sort of get a sense of demand growing versus demand shrinking?
I think the more complex the world becomes, the more we clinch to a guiding personality, someone that can lead us somewhere, someone that has an idea. What I believe is that humanity, personality will become so much more important in the future, because if literally everyone can do anything, let's just say play the scenario with AI, then I want to work with the one person that I trust the most, the one person that understands me, the one person that maybe has the same interest like me, maybe someone that maybe I look up to. Right? That's the thing. Like I believe personality in the creative industry becomes more and more important, and it's kind of a trend that started like a decade ago, where with also again with SaaS companies, like if you look at the biggest companies, and I include Apple in that, when you say Facebook, when you say Apple, when you say Tesla, we always have a face in mind, not just a logo, right? So personality already is part of the game. But all the second place companies like Reebok, I have no face in mind when I talk about Reebok. I don't know who, but when I talk about Nike as a competitor, I don't know. Not everyone knows Phil Knight, but everyone knows Michael Jordan, for example. But that's the point here. So I believe personality will be so much more important, and for creatives, the like if you want to play it safe, you gotta get your personality out there in some way. Could be with a podcast like you do. It could be with a festival like we do. But you want to get people to see you, to get to know you. That's build trust behind the scenes. It doesn't always have to be social media. It could be behind the scenes as well. But people need to know you. That's where I believe the whole thing goes.
Right. Yeah, I read something recently about companies hiring creative directors that are also creatives. Creative directors that are also creators.
Interesting.
And that was interesting. I don't know how, how much that's actually happening, but it was an interesting sort of thought. Somebody saw a pattern emerging. So what I sort of felt there is, yes, you're a creative director and you're, very good at what you do for your job, but also what are you creating? Like, how are you being that creator? And like you said, it could be something like this. It could be some form of art. It could be getting your personality out there somewhere. It does make this almost like another full-time job in a way, right? Because now you are working in a field and you're also thinking about how to be a creator of something. But this almost ties back to what you were saying in the beginning, where it's like finding that hour a day or that time on the weekend to create something that's outside of what you do on the day to day, right? And that could be, learning an instrument or speaking your mind on a topic, something that you're really interested in, going and finding that. For myself, it's getting to a stage where I just honestly want to bring all these ideas together and give back. And if people get some form of my personality out of that, what you wouldn't see, because we spend all of our lives behind the camera. So that was kind of like a big thing that I had to get out of the way. I've spoken about that before, of myself getting in front of the camera and not hiding behind it, right? Takes time to do those things. But I think there's value in that. You're right,
But it's also like, this is a personal development you went through, right? And this,
yeah,
I would imagine it felt good, or being where you are now feels good because you accomplished something.
Correct.
Also, you are a creator. Like, you have, I don't know, you spend a few hours a week doing a podcast.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that is already, and people get to know you, they can see you, they understand how you think. Also, people see you with a lot of other interesting people. So that builds your reputation, and that also gives back to society. And yes, you are one of those creative directors at big companies that are creators, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is something like, this is what people want. They want leaders. They want to see. I want to understand who you are, what your perspective is, because this could become my North Star. So I know, I may agree, I may not agree with you, but at least I have a North Star, and now I know what my opinion is.
Yeah, and it adds that differentiator, right, between you and the person next to you. One differentiator is your work and how good you are, which is also very subjective, right? Like, you may think the work that the person next to you is doing is fantastic and someone else may just not be into it. But then what's that additional layer, right? That separates you. And I think that is showing, like what you're saying, it's showing who you are. And almost like world building around yourself so that people can understand more about what you stand for and what your values are, which sometimes you don't get to see through the work, right? You can only sort of sometimes get that through speaking to somebody and understanding what they stand for, what their message is for the world.
What their message is, and when I kind of understand what your value system is, like kind of the things you value, then I kind of can predict how you will react in certain situations. For example, when you get into pressure and then if you have to deliver something tomorrow, will you go home or will you work through the night, or things like that, right? It kind of, that's the idea. It's like, that's why I think it's so important, and that we get our voice out there and be seen by people. It's because people start trusting you because they feel they can predict how you will react. And that's why people trust you.
Yeah. You become less irrational. Because it works for some people. You take certain people I won't mention any names, but in the public eye who are extremely irrational, and people follow that because they don't know what to expect, right? But then I think that also comes with a lack of sustainability. And I don't know if there's as much longevity in being completely irrational and unpredictable versus building that trust of who you are and what you're going to be without being boring at the same time.
If you show a history of being irrational, that also becomes something I can predict. Right? That's the same thing. It doesn't mean that I like it, but the more I get to know you and the more content I see of you, or the more I talk to you in private, the better I can. Look, quick example. We're building something bigger with Paradiso now. We're trying to bring people on board, and then we're trying to actually get partners on board, things like that. We spend a lot of time talking to people. So we understand fully who they are, what they value, things like that. We even meet their spouses, their family, because I want to understand what influences them, right? Like what other parties are there that could actually become a voice in their head and things like that. So if you want to trust something, you need to spend time with them. And that's why I believe long form content is so beautiful, and it works because the more you talk, things like that, the more you talk, the more people will trust you. And at some point, if you make an offer, they are more likely to buy from you. Why? Because they now understand, I can trust him.
And you've been consistent.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, consistent with the image you portray out there. Because if you are sometimes irrational and sometimes rational, and then that's bad.
Yeah. Because now, it's just sending mixed messages. And I think over time, I like to use that phrase, like the breadcrumbs that you're leaving, that is truly you, because there's only so long you can sort of pretend to be someone else, right? And so if you just be yourself and leave those breadcrumbs along the way for people to understand who you are, I think that generally, leads into building a profile of yourself for those who don't actually physically know you.
You just said something, it just made my mind stop. When you pretend you are someone, like a lot of people they tell me, like talking to people, it drains them of energy, it's exhausting, things like that. That is because you are not your true self. You pretend to be someone else, and that drains your energy. If you're because I bet if you would talk to your friends, you could talk forever. But in that scenario, you are yourself, and that's easier. That gives you energy. And this is kind of the idea of introvert, extroverts. Extroverts are just who they are, no matter the situation. Introverts try to be that person that they think you expect them to be, and that drains the energy. And that's also why they're more reflective, because they always look for cues. What do you want? What do you see? Things like that. But the same people are different with their family, with their friends, with everyone.
It takes a lot more energy to act, right? And to portray someone else than it does, honestly, just to be yourself. I think it's a great point. Marko, looking out to the weeks ahead and the quarters ahead, it feels like specifically in our field, everything is speeding up. It's hard to keep up with the pace of so much that's happening. Are there any sort of places in which you feel like we should be focusing, or focusing our energy on for the next quarter, the next week? Any sort of risks that you think that we should be taking ourselves now?
Look, as a person, like there's as a person and their situation as a studio. As a person, I believe you should find your way back to whatever creativity means to you, and you should start creating for yourself again. That could be writing, that could, maybe explore new things, but it's like get back into that energy and you will see things shifting. And that for a lot of people is taking a risk. As a studio, I believe not only next quarter, but that should be a habit. Make friends, reach out to past clients, take time, take the risk of time and give that time to people. Meaning meet new people, go to events, go to meet people online, LinkedIn, whatever. Try reaching out to people, connecting with you, connecting with me. Like those new connections, they will always lead to something fresh. And I think the thing you did, like this accomplishment, like getting from behind the camera to in front of the camera, I think that in some way, in your own way, this is what people should be doing.
On the topic of bravery, if there was one thing that those who are listening right now could sort of take away from this, what's the one brave thing you think that we could do this week?
Define who you actually want to be. Like if you want to be an artist, just write it down. I want to be an artist. This is the kind of life I want to live. And then see if there's something you can start implementing. Maybe you want to be a fine artist. Well, what would that look like? And then what's one step towards that? Because that, in terms of risk taking, that actually, it's like stepping out of your old identity will feel really scary. And in terms of risk taking, this is one of the bravest things you can do. Deciding to become someone you really want to be.
Yeah, that is actually really scary, because doing that, it's your first step will be this week or next week, whenever you decide to do it. But the journey of that is longer than taking that first step or writing it down. And going on that journey is often a scary thing, because we have briefs from clients that give us like the North Star of a problem to solve, but then trying to solve the problem of ourselves and who we are and who we want to be and get ourselves out of the routine takes a high degree of effort, right? So yes, writing it down is very much the first step. And I think that's the step that maybe a lot of us don't even necessarily take for many different reasons: life, time, focus elsewhere, relationships, etc. But I think when you do actually do that, then now it's in your mind. You've put it out on paper, and now it's this thing in the back of your head that you always is trying to call for your attention. And then now it takes that effort to just continue.
Exactly. But is it like you create this anchor in your brain, especially if you use a pen and paper, not writing it digitally, but really pen and paper that activates a different part of the brain. And there's also a commitment to that, right? If you write it down, it's a commitment. You did it with your own hand, with your own writing, right? It's like you did that then, and you kind of tell your subconscious, that's where I want to get to. And all of a sudden, your subconscious will show you things that could actually lead you there. And then, yes, then the next decisions come. Like, do you really want to do that? And you may need to learn something, or you need to step out of your own way in some way. It's like, and you're right, like this is a long journey, but I think the moment you decide to become that person, and really decide to become that person, your energy will shift too. And that is a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You just have to take that. Honestly, it sounds so cliche, but just taking that first step. But I do agree, especially now with how easy it is with AI to, write something. Sometimes you don't even have to write things ourselves anymore. But the act of taking that pen to paper and physically writing something down yourself is ingraining that in your memory, versus now it's very easy to automate, most things, especially, when it comes to writing. And I feel like I even noticed it myself, like my retention could sometimes go down when we are actually using some of these tools, right, to write with us. I wouldn't say for us, because you still have to have your input and you still have to craft around it. But I think taking the pen to the paper and writing it down helps you remember, and it stays with you.
It stays, yes, and it becomes part of you. And it does sound cliche, but this is how the brain works, right?
Yeah.
You want to give the brain a command. You either say it or you write it. And in your brain, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you say it or write it, you still repeat the words, and it will be in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think everything starts with a commitment, and that's why I believe the most beautiful, the strongest tagline out there is just do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's that. It's like decide for it and just do it. Like that. Like what Nike does is like they minimize the time between decision making, actually doing it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Decide and do it.
Just get out. Make the first
get
move.
Out.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, Marko, really appreciate all the time. I think there's I'm going to go back obviously and listen to this. There's a lot of really interesting thoughts and topics that I found really valuable, and I hope those who are listening to got something out of this, at least to be able to think about your own careers and lives in a different way, and taking some of that creative risk, even in the climate that we're in. And you influence a lot of people, a lot of individuals, a lot of companies. And, the question that I ask a lot of my guests that come on the show is, what, in your position, what do you think it takes to be a professional creative in this space, especially with the influence that you have and the responsibility?
I believe the responsibility you have as a person, as a human being, is making people feel good always, and B is challenging people to get out of their patterns, to get out of their comfort zones, and that's as a creative for your clients. That's why they come to you. But that's also for my kids. Like, this is parenting, literally, and it's also. And trying to challenge people also means you will challenge yourself at some point. But yeah, so and I think, but also with this notion, this is very important to me. I try, like, when people talk to me, that they always feel better after they have talked to me than when they came to me. And I think bringing this more humanity back into the world, that goes a long way.
Yeah, there's a lot of isolation. Right now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, people don't talk to each other anymore. It's like, we had people coming to Paradiso, people that used to be best friends, living in LA, the same city, haven't seen each other for 10 years. So they came to Mexico, saw them again, and like reunite. And that was just not just one incident. Like, that happens so often, so easily.
Well, thanks again for all of the time. I hope to see you at Paradiso in 2026.
I'll be there for sure. I hope you will come.
Or before that, but definitely aiming to get out there and have that crazy experience again. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and as I was saying before, we started this conversation, it left me very recharged. Even though we didn't get to spend time talking, I felt the vibe through what you and Hector created, and so thank you for doing that, and thank you for all of the effort that you're doing with your clients and companies. And I know it's a lot of work and it's a lot of energy to do that, and it takes a lot of experience to be able to guide others. So thank you for all of the contributions that you're doing with all of us as well. It doesn't go unnoticed, and I'm glad that we could have this conversation.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much. Like, I really deeply appreciate that, and thanks for having me here. Like, this is, yeah, I'm speechless now. Thank you so much, and thank you for actually doing that podcast and actually giving people a voice too. This is important.
No, thank you for coming on. And Marko, where can people find you? Just before we go.
So basically, I mean, just my name. I'm on LinkedIn. You Google Paradiso first or Paradiso. The company or consulting company is called Not on Sale. We are on every major platform and on Google as well.
Okay. And I'll put all of these details in the episode description and the link so people can find you there also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marko. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Simon.
Cheers.
Cheers.